investors have to trust CEOs, and CEOs have to trust the investor. And of course, just like a relationship partnership, trust is everything relative to the ability to handle problems and opportunities. And you have to be able to really believe in what the other person is saying, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do.
Welcome to episode 249 of the industry's leading business podcast for fitness owners and managers. We'd like to thank this month's premier podcast partner, Team Rockstar Fit, the award-winning mastermind group for women in fitness to expand their careers online in partnership with Beachbody. Don't get left behind in the industry. Get support, get online, and get ahead. Visit teamrockstarfit.com to schedule your free strategy session. Hi everyone, a warm welcome to you all and thank you for joining me for this week's show. My special guest this week is Jon Canarick. Jon is the Managing Director of Northcastle Partners, the leading small cap consumer private equity firm focused in the healthy, active and sustainable living sectors. Jon started his career at Northcastle Partners as an associate out of investment banking and played a crucial role in the development of Northcastle and many of its portfolio companies. He sits on the board of directors of companies including Echelon Fit, Barry's Bootcamp, Curves, Jenny Craig, and SLT, to name a few. During this week's interview, I asked Jon, when they look to invest, what are some of the factors that actually impact their decision? We discuss what he feels the fitness market will look like in the future, plus Jon shares tips for forming a partnership, be it with a person or an entity. We're about to transition into my interview with Jon, but first, thank you to our podcast partner, Team Rockstar Fit. Want to live a happy and balanced life? Get online. Trina Gray and Team Rockstar Fit offer mentoring and support to women in fitness to expand online with tools from Beachbody. Earn money out of the trenches. To find out more, visit teamrockstarfit.com. Now, everyone, just to set the scene, I think it's important that you understand a little more about Northcastle Group and the brands that they work with. So I had a quick phone catch up with Jon before our main interview so that he could share a little bit of background with us on a few of their best known investments. Take a listen.
The best known fitness investments outside of Equinox are probably Barry's Bootcamp. That's probably the most well-known company in our portfolio today. Your listeners in the New York area would also know SLT, which is a Pilates-style workout, and a climbing gym business called Brooklyn Boulders, which again would be a little bit more regional in nature. So depending on where your listeners are from, they may or may not know that. We used to own Curves, which is a fairly well-known brand as well. In addition, on the retail side, we actually just made a new investment in a Crunch franchisee. People probably know that the Crunch franchisor just got acquired by a private equity firm called TPG. We also, nearly at the same time, made a large investment in the largest franchisee of Crunch. And then on the equipment side of the business, we currently are invested in a company called Hydro Massage, which is very well known to people in the Planet Fitness or the Crunch Fitness universe. We used to own Octane Fitness as well, which is a great elliptical equipment company that you would come across in many health clubs. And then very recently, we invested in an exciting young company called Echelon Fitness, which has a connected spin bike, similar to Peloton at a significantly lower price point. That bike is available for sale, of course, online, but also in a number of mass market retailers across the U.S. And we're looking at some global expansion opportunities. So a new investment for us that we're very excited about.
So, funny story, one of the brands that Jon just mentioned was SLT, which stands for Strengthen, Lengthen and Tone. As many of you know, I'm a Group X instructor myself, and I'm a massive fan of a good, tough workout like a Barry's or a great cycle class. But I did SLT class in New York earlier this year, and let me tell you, it was super tough. So the whole class is actually done on a megaformer machine. So if you kind of picture a Pilates reformer, but mega, and it's all about slow and controlled movements. It was definitely a challenging workout. Anyway, I have no doubts that you'll recognize many of those brands that Jon just mentioned. So let's now dive straight into my interview with Jon. And I started off by asking him why North Castle partners are interested in investing in the fitness industry. Here's what he had to say.
North Castle has been investing for over 20 years now and has always been exclusively focused on the health and wellness categories. And we spend a significant portion of our time in fitness and active living and nutrition and everything related to nutrition. And so all of the things that go into living, hopefully a better, healthier, longer, active lifestyle. The fitness industry is obviously a very big part of health and wellness. And we discovered the fitness industry at our earliest days in 2000 when we invested in Equinox, and really have been on top of the industry and investing in the industry ever since. There's incredibly positive long-term trends and increases in participation rates and knowledge about why fitness is so important. And so it's made for a great business sector for us and our investment money.
Jon, when you're actually looking to invest in a business, what are some of those factors that impact your decision?
There are many. It starts with management, and whether that's an entrepreneur who's also the CEO, or whether that's somebody else who's transitioned into the business. But we're looking to make a connection and a shared vision with an entrepreneur. And then from there, it's of course about the business model. North Castle is not a venture capital firm, and so we're not investing in something that is only a concept and may sound great on paper. We are investing in businesses that are up and running and have various proof points. And so for your audience and a lot of people, I think, that listen to this, where we spend a lot of our time, of course, is in the retail side and the fitness club space or studio space. And for us, proof of concept is multiple locations in multiple geographies. So it's one thing to have a successful business in New York City, you have 2 or 3 stores, but it's another thing to have a successful business with locations in either various cities or various types of markets. So SLT, for example, very successful in New York City when we invested, but also quite a strong business in the suburbs around the New York area. So it wasn't something that only worked in Manhattan. And Barry's, similarly, very urban concept, but was successful when we invested in Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco, Boston, et cetera. So proof that something is not just a one city business, which also means that management has been able to expand it outside that core market where he or she may be able to overly impact that one location, or 2 locations, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's scalable.
So now that we have a better idea of some of those factors that impact the decision-making process, Jon, I have to tell you that there's a great chance that many of our listeners, they might be small business owners and they're looking for some type of investment. So with that in mind, what would you recommend that they should be doing in their business to make it look attractive for a small investment?
So a great business model that is not overly dependent or obviously dependent on the founder, I think is really important for investors, even when it's a small business. And that's really hard to prove. But ultimately, if an investor is coming in early with the hopes that the business become a much larger company, the ability for the founder to be, both the lead trainer and CEO in the case of a retail business, or the head salesperson and head marketing person in the case of a product business, makes the business much more expandable, or easier for an investor to believe it's expandable if it's not overly reliant on that one person. And so I see a lot of times, I get a lot of phone calls in the industry, and it's something has an incredible, one or maybe even two locations, but also, that CEO is the main personality in the business, and that makes it hard to necessarily, grow beyond that. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I think a lot of small business owners who want outside capital, need to consider. Of course, not all small business owners want outside capital, and there's nothing wrong with having a great, small business that is, successfully generating profits for that individual. So that's a sort of a CEO or an entrepreneur comment, I guess. And then as far as, the business model itself is something that's replicable, something that is very much, on trend while not being a fad. And that's in the eyes of the beholder. I get those questions all the time from North Castle's investors is how to get comfortable that some of these boutique businesses in particular, or climbing businesses, well, because climbing's hot, is not temporarily hot, but is, sort of here to stay. And so people think a lot about that, that question. And then there's just the fundamentals of the business. Is it a model that works? Are you able to sell it, for a decent price? In the case of a product above what it costs, is the market opportunity, there? And so you mentioned before how you found SLT to be really challenging, and you're someone who's from the industry. I get that question all the time, as well as SLT attractive enough to enough people as a workout, or the same thing in the case of Barry's, which people, say is very intimidating. And so we have to assess that, right? What is the total market opportunity? So is your product or service appealing to a large enough of an audience to make it an attractive growth candidate? And so we're making those assessments all the time.
That's absolutely fascinating, John. And you mentioned just then about the climbing market. That business is really big, which is kind of interesting for me to hear, because from an Australian perspective, I wouldn't say that it's anything that we kind of see very much of in our market at the moment. But I keep hearing things coming out of the US about this climbing industry and how much it's growing. So you mentioned before about identifying whether something is just a fad versus, something that will stay in the market for a long period of time and worthwhile investing. Can you just give us a bit of an insight at how do you determine that?
Through a lot of conversations with people both inside and outside the industry, and just a general, ability to have a strong opinion myself and my colleagues, having spent so much time in fitness. But I'm lucky enough to have a strong network of people who have been in this industry a long time from being in it myself. And, people have opinions, and they're nothing more than opinions. And a lot of people are wrong on trend versus fad from time to time, but you have to use your judgment. To me, it's how effective is it, right? So for us, science plays a big role in our decision. Something that's fun, but a fad, but doesn't necessarily really work and deliver an efficacious workout, again, whether it's a product or a service, is a big starting point for assessing trend versus fad. And so you get into climbing, for example. Climbing is actually a really great way to muscle train, to strength train. And there's very strong science about climbing or being suspended off the ground, and what it does for your small twitch muscles in particular, that leads to great fitness. But then there's other factors you have to consider about where trends are headed. And climbing is a really cool social business too, right? Where you cannot, you can go for a 60-minute run. You can't go for a 60-minute climb, at least inside a climbing gym, right? So, a lot of the climbing happens on the bouldering walls, not the tall walls. And people climb for 30 seconds or 45 seconds and then they take a rest and it's a social thing. And I know you weren't asking specifically about climbing, but the concept in general. So for us, it always starts with the science, and then you go and consider other societal trends and try to make an assessment of whether something is real or not.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing those insights with us, Jon. So let's kind of flip this and talk about selling a business. When it comes to actually selling a business, obviously we think about things like a multiple of profit is the number one valuation, but are there any other factors that would influence the value of a business, things like goodwill or branding or equipment? Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Sure. So it really most starts, at least in my opinion, with the potential for the business. And so I would consider us a lower middle market investor. We're not venture capital, but we're also not investing in a business that's already, $1 billion in revenue. And so the multiple of profit really is a proxy for what one thinks the profit of that business is going to be in the future. And so you go to before the comment around how difficult something may be or how niche-y something may be, that affects the total market opportunity. And that's really obviously in the eyes of the beholder. And you have to just look at each business individually and understand, what the market opportunity is. And so I'll go back to, Equinox. And I think when we invested, Equinox was fairly groundbreaking in terms of the price point it was charging, right? If you go back all the way to 2000, and it was like, well, only people in New York would pay that. And there was an assessment, right, that we thought people all over the country in certain markets that would pay that, and that Equinox was a business that could be expanded nationally. And we made a similar assessment about Barry's. People said, oh my God, how big can the market be for some people willing to pay, over $30 to attend a class? And you do the best job you can assessing that. And that really determines what multiple of profit you're willing to pay for a business today is an output of how big you think that profit can be in the future. Brand is extremely important in all of that, because what brand really goes to is how difficult or as easy it is to replicate that outcome as you grow into new channels or new markets. But a strong brand is, of course, a lot easier to grow because there's people who want to be a part of that brand or want to experience that brand. And assessing the strength of a brand, that's obviously challenging. That goes back to, spending a lot of time in the industry, and there's all sorts of tools that one can use today, like traffic and social media presence, but customer interviews is a really strong way to do that. And so for us, that total market opportunity and the strength of the brand, which really is the goodwill, as opposed to a book goodwill, which is not very meaningful to us anyway. Brand strength is just absolutely critical in assessing the value of a business.
Jon, just listening to you speak, it's so obvious that you are completely immersed in the fitness industry and have such a thorough understanding of what's going on, not only now, but it sounds like, looking at what the future looks like. So in your experience, what do you think the fitness market will look like in years to come?
I think we're going to see a continued, and so this is not an overly bold statement, because it really is a continuation of trend. We're seeing in the fitness industry, right, a move to boutique and premium, and a move to value and low price. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And quite honestly, it mirrors what you're seeing in the consumer marketplace in general. You're seeing growth in luxury and premium. You're seeing tremendous growth in value pricing, where quality is a lot higher than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And in fitness, I think you're seeing something very similar. You're seeing a flight to value and the incredible growth of Planet and Crunch and other providers in the HVLP space, and I believe Jet in your market. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing, and obviously, an incredible growth in boutique fitness, which hardly existed a little more than a decade ago. And I see tremendous runway for that to continue. Now, there are lots and lots of stores out there. And one of the big things that a lot of people are talking about, which really does impact the growth of the industry, is just how much retail space is available, right? As traditional retailers of apparel or hard goods continue to close, that leaves more space to be filled in by service companies. And a lot of those service companies are coming in the fitness industry. And so there's lots and lots of competition out there. And so as far as traditional four-wall fitness goes, I do see a continuation of trend. And then, of course, there's the home market, right? And what Peloton has accomplished is nothing short of extraordinary. They've created an incredible community of people working out in their homes, but still feeling connected to one another and to the brand. And I believe that is, the beginning of a revolution in home fitness towards connected and content driven, as opposed to the traditional stuff sitting in people's workout rooms or basements. I do believe that Peloton is, the gold standard and has captured, I think, the higher end of that market. But I do believe there's opportunity for other connected hardware in the home market, and that eventually that'll just be the expectation, right? That there's no fitness experience that doesn't also come with some sort of connectivity. And there's obviously various shapes and forms that can take. I will say, I am not a believer that the connected fitness market at home will lead to the destruction or downfall of traditional four-wall. I think there's a tremendous market and need for people to work out together live, and that market, I think, is continues to be very large and will continue to be very large for a long time. And a lot of people that work out at home also work out in a gym or studio environment, and the wins behind this industry are really exciting. Younger generations care more about fitness than older generations, but the search for the fountain of youth has penetration rates and participation rates in fitness growing across really all of the various generations. And so I just think there's lots of forces out there which will continue to fuel an increase in the number of workouts, and those workouts will really be spread across amazing home experiences like Peloton has delivered, as well as value price places to work out like Crunch and premium players, of course, like Brooklyn, Barry's, and SLT.
Jon, we finish off each of our shows with Fitbispiration. What would be your top 3 tips for forming a partnership either with a person or with an entity?
So our investment philosophy is very much about partnership. It is really all about a partnership with the CEO and management team and North Castle. And so I think the keys to forming a great partnership are, one is you have to find a partner that has a shared vision. And it's really important to work that out or work that through up front. It doesn't have to be worked out. If an investor has a different vision than you have, unless you turn to agree with them, then that's not the right partner for you. And it doesn't mean that either side is wrong. It just means it's really important to be, in the boat together, rowing in the same direction. And so a strong partnership starts with a shared excitement around a business plan. It's then supported, by frequent and open, honest communication. Investors have to trust CEOs, and CEOs have to trust the investor. And of course, just like a relationship partnership, trust is everything relative to the ability to handle problems and opportunities. And you have to be able to really believe in what the other person is saying, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And really, it all comes down to me, those two things, a sort of a shared vision, and then, frequent and open and honest, direct communication. And then if I was just trying to add a third, but it maybe goes very closely with number 2, is you have to treat people the right way and approach everything with high integrity, and don't feel like you're, trying to quote sell something to somebody when you're looking for an investor partner. Ultimately, of course, you are, selling them on your vision and your business, but it has to be done from a truthful perspective. And so we are really proud of the partnerships we develop with our CEOs, and that is, I think, a big part of what makes us successful and a desired partner to entrepreneurs in the industry.
Jon, we are very grateful for you joining us today. As I mentioned to you before we started the interview, over the course of 4 years and 240 shows, this is not an area that we've talked about before. And I'm very proud of the show that we've come to this kind of place that we can have someone like you come on and educate us in this area. I think it's something that many of the FBP family will be interested to learn more about and to hear more about. And I really feel like today has been a great education and a great insight for many of us today. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for having me. And I enjoy listening to your show as one of your many listeners.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you once again to Jon for today's interview. Now here's a message from our friends at MX Metrics. Member experience is more than just NPS. With MXM's Member Experience Toolkit, you build a unified view of the member experience, from purchase to onboarding to everyday usage and cancellation. Wire your entire organization with actionable feedback using MXN's Member Experience Toolkit. To find out more, go to mxmetrics.com.
Precore Quickfire 5.
This week's Precore Quickfire 5 guest is the Director of Grace Curve Consulting, Simon Walshaw. Simon, welcome along. It is so great to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chantel. Really looking forward to it.
Let's dive directly into our Precore Quickfire 5 and start off by telling everyone, why do you do what you do?
Yeah, look, I love creating a trusting environment with leaders and seeing leaders develop and become the best they can be in that space. Absolutely love it.
And what's one ritual that helps you become better at what you do?
Sometimes I can find this one tricky, but listening more than speaking, really listen to the customer and get their needs. And above all, trying to be just genuine, trying to be myself is what I love about this space.
And what's one app or system that you would use to stay in control of your workload?
Yeah, when it comes to workload, one of the things I'm not so great at is the accounting side of things. So I use QuickBooks Connect in that space. It just takes all the worry off my hands in regard to my accounts and allows me to focus on the things that are most important to me. So yeah, QuickBooks Connect's probably that one that helps me the most.
I'm sure a lot of people will relate to not loving doing their accounts.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what's one book, podcast or blog that you would recommend and why?
Look, I love LeadX, which is a podcast by Kevin Cruz. He is able to interview some of the world's best leaders, and I love listening to the wisdom that comes out of those leaders and try and adapt that to my leadership journey as well. So probably LeadX by Kevin Cruz. I wasn't familiar with podcasts until maybe a year ago, but now, wow, what a resource at our fingertips.
They definitely become addictive, that's for sure. Great recommendation. Thank you for that. And just give us a really brief overview about the topic that we're going to be focusing on during your main interview.
Sure. So what I like to focus on in my line of work is creating and enhancing constructive cultures. So trying to build a best culture or best practice in a business around a great culture.
Excellent. Well, Simon, I really look forward to chatting to you about that topic next week.
Likewise. Can't wait, Chantel. Look forward to it.
MyZone is a wearable technology platform that leverages personal goal setting, gamification, and social platforms to motivate your members. To find out more, go to myzone.org. Thank you for joining me for this week's show, and a reminder that all the resources and links for today's episode can be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Thank you to our foundation partner, Active Management. As a listener of the show, you have a special opportunity to work with JT. You can get one free session when you buy one coaching session. No matter where you are in the world, technology allows him to work with you. Simply go to activemgmt.com.au/FBP family and work with JT to get more people moving and moving more often. That's one free session when you buy one coaching session, and it's exclusive to you. Go to www.activemgmt.com.au/FBP family. Thank you once again for joining me today, and remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.